Everyone, welcome to another edition of the Buddy Study Group. And first of all, we want to thank you for your attendance, your engagement, your questions, and your support for our annual market review webinar last week. We were overjoyed with how it went. We hope you are too. And if there's one takeaway that we had for sure from that webinar is that we got way more questions than we could ever answer in about an hour's time. Especially given that so many people brought questions in the chat to be able to share with us and get our thoughts on. So, what I wanted to do today was get back to those questions that we got either pre-registration or in the chat during the webinar, and let's just answer them right here and now. And if you were one of these question askers, I hope you're watching this recording if you're not here, because we will likely answer your question. So I think, Mark or Gretchen, anything you want to say about the webinar itself before I start running through some of these questions?
Anything, well, I'll just reiterate what you said. It was awesome. Lots of engagement. Very, very happy with that. And yeah, no, I would say just let's fire away at these questions and see if we can answer some more of them because uh, they whether individual or group business, a lot of them apply to both. Some of them apply to both. So yeah, I just say let's fire away at the questions, Jace.
Sounds good. I would say one of them is really up all three of our alleys. Will you offer more LTC workshops during the year to educate more people? Well, number one, we're sitting on one, but I don't want to be that reductive in the way that I answer that question. Obviously, the study group can be seen as a workshop, but I think there may be a bit more merit to having these sort of larger, we are formally inviting you and asking you to join us, and we want to make a big party out of this. They do take quite a lot of resources and time to be able to put together. But what are your guys' thoughts on that, on more workshop or
Cool.
webinar-like study group sessions?
Well, let's start by kind of talking about the opportunities and channels we have, like you kind of
Sure.
started with, right? So probably we'll do these webinars maybe twice a year, these large scale webinars. But the study groups, obviously, and then we also have the Facebook group, which is another good year-round opportunity to ask group of peers. A lot of people in this room are part of the Facebook group, so I would definitely encourage you on demand to post there to ask questions there. Definitely we could use more engagement there overall. Like we do post like the study groups and the recordings, but like that's a good way to collaborate. I'm planning to start a podcast as well. Maybe in a month or so. That's my personal goal. So just another, kind of format people can listen to on the weekend while doing
What are
laundry.
people going to learn about on your podcast, Mark?
A great question. I think it's going to be a little bit broader scope. So definitely we'll talk some long-term care topics, but I'll have guests on from different parts of the insurance industry to talk about where are they taking, education, technology to the next level in their space. Because I think there's a lot of commonality with things that we can draw from to improve the long-term care space as well. So that's kind of my thoughts right now. I don't have a title for it, but definitely will let you guys know. And a lot of you guys on this call might want to be guests or, be a part of that. So definitely reach out if you're interested. But not to be exactly like this study group, but just another way to learn, right? Which is
Yeah,
what this is all about.
agreed. So I'm going to put a little X into that one. Gretchen, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, pretty much what Mark said. Study groups, Facebook group. Yeah, I don't know if Mark, if you said this, but if you guys have any want to anyone you want to hear from, any topic you want us to cover, you can put that in the Facebook group. You can email us, whatever. There's just, you know, we like to hear from you and what you're interested in and what can help you build your business.
Yep.
Rumor has it that Gretchen is actually going to host some of the study groups in 2026.
The rumor is wrong.
So you'll get
No,
some different perspectives, that's for sure.
yeah, for sure.
So I'm going to take these maybe a little out of order. I'm marking them off as we answer them, but I just think some are really provocative and I just want to ask them. Now, what is the prognosis for the future of traditional long-term care? I think this is a good one for you, Mark.
It's a good question.
Yeah, I hope and I think it won't go away ever. I do think it's going to evolve along with what consumer preferences are. And the carriers need to respond to what's working well. The one gleaming light in the space right now is Bankers Life, which obviously is a career company. Many people maybe in this group don't have as much exposure to it because they don't broker their products, but they have surprisingly doubled their sales. And now they're, as far as I know, the number one traditional long-term care carrier in the country. And essentially, they built a short-term care-like product that's filed as long-term care. So a 1 year, 2 year plan, simplified underwriting. But it's meeting consumer preferences and it's doing very well. And I think it's actually pretty good in terms of the risk profile as well, believe it or not. Um, Partly because it's sold, in a career type of channel where they're selling that product to all the clients. So you get a spread of risk that way. But I think partly also because I think they're using data and technology in a good way, where they can do 1 day issue policies because they have data on people kind of on demand. So if you invest in the technology, I think you're going to be a winner there. But Jason, it sounds like you have something to add
Well,
there too.
I also think one of the things that's leading to the success of that product is um, in a lot of different cells, I feel like it's priced a bit more conservatively. Some may say responsibly, I'll say conservatively, when placed next to actual short-term care products. I think that's something that will likely help to sustain the long-term health of that product. And I think it's a nice model that is not truly short-term care, but is in earnest trying to do something different in a way that other carriers will take notice. I think when it comes to traditional long-term care, I, like you, I believe and hope that it'll be around forever because of one very specific thing, and that's the long-term care partnership program. Now, I wonder if there will ever be some sort of expansion of the partnership program. It was created in the infancy or when most hybrid products were a twinkle in everybody's eye, and we've seen a lot more different types of products emerge. But right now, long-term care, traditional long-term care as partnership, that's why I want to keep it around. That's something that I think is completely underutilized. And I think many of us um, no offense intended, we've learned to kind of switch our brain off to traditional long-term care, and we are discounting one of the major value adds for the middle market. I think we're trying to put traditional long-term care in this box where it's only made for very, specific people, or only if they ask for it, or only if it's their preference. And part of it is the carriers need to give us something to get excited about as a market, but I also think we as agents have to do a lot more due diligence on where we place traditional long-term care and not keep it out of as many conversations as we're likely keeping it out of.
Sure. Yeah,
So,
it's also a supply constrained issue, right? The carriers
yep.
don't want to sell it. You're not gonna have attractive products. But I do think the carriers, Bankers is one of them, but also Thrivent, right, has discontinued their hybrid to really double down on their traditional product. NGL launching a new product. Beach Omaha still committed to the market there too. So we do have at least four strong carriers really committed. Some of the career companies that have traditional, I think they're going more in that hybrid direction, to be honest.
Mhm.
So I don't
Yep.
think they're really trying to do as much as they used to in the traditional space, which means they're probably not going to grow as much because of that. But that's really also the light there. We are going to see two new entrants as well, right? Genworth Care Scout has already entered the market, and then there's going to be a new carrier on the group traditional long-term care market. So having new options is going to do a lot to say, hey, there's still some good opportunities, life here, competition, all of that.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things we talked about on the market review. You know, a jab in the elbow to other group carriers that have hybrid solutions only. I'm not saying go out and develop a traditional product if it's kind of not within your plans or bandwidth, but separately identifiable long-term care premiums will be really nice to compete with the new group traditional carriers who are going to be able to be sold with an added sort of benefit to the business owner to fund plans and thereby secure guaranteed participation. I think that's still a big deal, and we've kind of poked at that sore for a minute now. I think that's going to continue to be a big deal, and traditional long-term care coming back to the group space is only going to stoke that fire a bit more. It was good. Really good, provocative question. And we answered some of this, Mark, by talking about, you know, bankers' really big rise. But there was a question about which companies sold the most long-term care in 2025 and why. Maybe we can give a little flavor to that on the group space as well.
I don't get the official numbers until like around the first, second quarter, so I don't actually have the Limra sales
So
numbers.
TBD.
TBD, but I can give like anecdotal, information, which is I do think that you see the traditional space outside of bankers still declining slightly, still continuing that trend. Um, it's still 55% of the policies sold if you combine the traditional and the extension hybrid space. So there are still a lot of people getting it. There's still a lot of accounts that believe in traditional and are only offering that product. But that margin is shrinking close to 50-50 now. The premiums, though, are really going more towards those hybrid plans. You're seeing that affluent space going hybrid more often, maybe getting better value there. You're seeing more of the middle market mass affluent looking for affordable plans going with that traditional. So I think it's kind of they're bifurcated a little bit, right, in terms of where do they fall socioeconomic wise. I do think that it's getting younger too, and that's just due to the tougher underwriting that continues to be a feature, of the industry, but that also obviously makes it more stable in the future. So
Yeah,
overall, yeah, that's kind of where we see the total numbers.
totally agree with you. The real numbers will be out at some point, first quarter of this year, most likely. Um, I really love this question. Again, just some of the ways that these questions are asked are very interesting to me. So thank you for submitting these. What size groups are asking for or are solicited for long-term care most frequently?
Hmm. Yeah, it's quite a
It's all
mix.
shapes and sizes, right? I
Hmm.
mean, to a
Yeah.
degree, I don't know if I could peg a group size
Hmm.
as most kind of frequently solicited or
I think
asking for it.
I think the ones we hear from the most are the ones that already explored long-term care in the past. So we're seeing right now a lot of Unum requests, and those groups span the gamut, but definitely that medium-sized employer is very prevalent. Call it, 25 to a few hundred employees. There's a lot of groups in that segment. Obviously, if you're
Agreed.
able to get business owners coverage, we obviously have minimums for the group plans now down to 3 or 5 lives. You can definitely do it for smaller groups as well. But from a group perspective and just, the setup, the time it takes to set those up, the amount of benefits people can get, definitely that medium market is where we get the most inquiries. The large market is where the carriers want to play. And that's sometimes the early adopters have been the very large technology companies even. So we're seeing all of the Fortune 10 largest companies, which are all tech companies now, have long-term care as a benefit through the hybrid plans. So, you know, just like everything else, there's niches. You can really cater to any segment, but those are the ones that already have it. So they're asking to see, hey, is there something new? Can I upgrade this? My plan's being discontinued. That's why we're getting a lot of inbound there.
Yeah, and I think, of the largest of the large companies, you mentioned many are tech companies. Many of them play in similar spheres. So the reason you're likely seeing a lot of activity there is they are all competing for the same pool of talent as well, to a degree, in some of their most important roles, right? Beyond just their executive roles, the day-to-day employee roles. So, you can do all of the intel you want on your competitors' benefits, but if you're able to get that intel and you see that there's something you're not offering that they are, that's, you know, not to say it's a tipping point, but you don't want to necessarily show that discrepancy in benefits if you can help it, right? So there's a lot of competition to be able to offer the same or better benefits to be able to attract talent. I don't think that narrative plays so as much with smaller groups. Um, but I do think there's a degree of competition for talent in every industry, right?
Mhm.
I think just the reasons for different group sizes being interested can tend to differ a bit. But there's tons of reasons why a specific industry or another might want to offer group long-term care, be it the nature of their work, makes them more aware of the long-term care issue, um, be it you know, nonprofits, some nonprofits being groups that actually have to spend their surplus to be a nonprofit. So we got to one of the ways we do that is continuing to add great benefits for our employees who we can't actually afford to pay a large amount of payroll toward, right?
Mhm.
Um,
So a
so
couple of industries like that you're talking about, hospitals, we see a lot of school systems, universities, like not-for-profits in general. Jason mentioned law firms as well, and some others like of those white collar professional groups. So yeah, it does really span the gamut there. But it's the same groups that bought the long-term care in the past.
agreed. Ooh, this is a good one. It's kind of like this burns. What are the pain points and future roadmap for long-term care policyholder communications? I don't know if any of us have the answer to that, but maybe what we think should be the norm that might not be at this point, or what frustrates you, Mark? Nothing,
Um,
right?
well, and Gretchen can you
Smile.
can probably speak to this as well. I would say that what we're trying to do is again create more of a modern, transparent experience. So I think portals have become more popular, which is a good thing, where you can just download your policy information. You don't have to like call into somebody or get something in the mail, right? So we're seeing, a lot of companies modernizing how they send the policies, but people still need that high touch as well. It's really important to have the agent, the specialist involved in that process because they're not necessarily going to even understand what they're getting or reading. So it's important that you combine always the technology, ease of access with having somebody who can be their concierge to guide them.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because the carrier isn't going to necessarily except in the case where they need to have a beneficiary or something. They're not going to remind them what they have or how to use it or how to file a claim. And so I think that's where, we come in, you guys come in, and, we can definitely improve that policyholder experience and the information that we're providing, on whether it's, on the group side and reminding them about portability, or, on the individual side and just, just the reminder and, who to contact to file a claim and, So yeah, just continuing education even after they've purchased, well, after they purchase the policy, because that's when it's super important, because otherwise they're going to forget, their family's not going to know, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. A lot of our recent anecdotes come from the group side, of course.
yeah, yeah.
And a lot of the time you try to drive to the bottom of an issue that one individual or 5 or 10 individuals are having. And at the very bottom, you kind of find, oh, I thought you guys were going to do that, or something to that nature. We don't do that. So I think you're absolutely right, Gretchen. That's where agents and brokerages come in exercising their great skills of pattern recognition to understand if there is a problem that policyholders are having, and we're noticing another pattern of the carrier not, advocating for XYZ value add for the consumer. If we can, we want to try to give those reminders to the policyholders ourselves, or if it's lightweight and simple enough to do, add a value add that will keep that policyholder from feeling like they're in the dark, or just to the individual agent side for all of you. Just because somebody has bought from you and you may have an annual review, or you may reach out to them to schedule an annual review, a couple of outreaches a year is something that's going to give that client the peace of mind. Hey, I'm still here. Remember, when it's time to do this thing, it's going to be me unless stated otherwise, right? So I think you're totally on the button with that, Gretchen. Agents and brokerages and companies like ours, it's really up to us to come in to
Mhm.
get that extra layer of policyholder experience. Next one we have opportunities to work with Buddy INS. Can't work with us, can't work without us. Um, Mark, I mean, what are your thoughts here? I know it's very general.
Mhm.
On the group side, it's really going to be down to many times having a case. It doesn't need to be a case that's already sold, but it's best if there is a case that is at least aware of your existence, that you have met and talked to, who has even the smallest degree of interest. And that's where we can get involved to help you to bring more strength to the continuing conversations. Of course, if you've got a case that is, ready to see some numbers, we help with the proposal process. We can also train you to be self-sufficient with the proposal process that many enjoy. And if you've got a case that is sold and ready to go, we are really, that's kind of our bread and butter on the enrollment side, is being that tech partner to help give employees educational resources. We can be the educational webinar, the enrollment platform setup and administration, helping with implementation with the carrier. There's lots we can do on the group side. A lot of it is going to be based around having a case at some point in the process. Anything I missed there, Mark? And um,
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, we are trying to invest in where we're seeing the growth in the long-term care market. So the newer markets, obviously the group market is where we see the fastest growth. So think of us as your enrollment implementation partner, because group cases obviously require a lot more, as Jason mentioned, technology and touch, and there's new carriers that you have to get familiar with. So that's where you're going to find the biggest benefit from what Buddy's doing is, and where we're investing the most, is to be able to enable you to be in that high growth market. That being said, on the individual side, there's new carriers. There's a lot of new annuity long-term care products, short-term care products. So we're also trying to build technology and quoting tools to support some of those newer products. And all of that can be found in the portal. So the way to find out what we're focused on is just go into the portal and explore those quoting tools. And then you'll have a pretty good idea of how that can help you grow your business and find opportunities.
100%. And if you are new to the long-term care industry as a whole, we do offer joint work with um, buddy INS specialists that we are very, very close with. And I really recommend using that, even if it's just for your first case, your first two or three cases, or if you are somebody who is working in a tangential industry and that's 99% of what you do, but you want to, be on these study groups, you become educated in the importance of long-term care and say, I need to be offering this to my clients. It can be a service where you establish a one-to-one relationship with a long-term care specialist where you can refer clients and you can talk with that specialist about how do I tee up this conversation and get it working and still have um, a commission split that you're paid on for that referral. So I think that's an underrated piece of this. Um, and I'll tell you what, I recommend it to everybody who says, I'm new at this. I did long-term care 15 years ago, but now I'm back and ready to roll. Um, and for people who have really had the humility to admit to me straight up, hey, I have problems closing. I need help getting my clients to understand the importance of this to the point where they take action. That is a totally different can of worms that some people may be great at setting up the conversation, but when it comes to getting it over the end zone, I need to learn to have what it takes to kind of politely wrestle people into something that's good for them that they know is good for them, right? They know they need to do it, but I don't want them to um, actually wait forever until they can't do anything, right? So I need to strike that balance and be more politely persistent. Those are the areas I recommended, and I think it could be for you if you fall into those categories.
Can I ask a question? Because
Of
this
course.
this did come up. I think it came up on the call, or it's in one of the questions. Somebody asked us, uh, what is a starter plan on the group side, which I think is an important question for this group here today
Sure.
because it also relates to individual business and how we can make that transition from somebody getting a starter plan through their employer and then how that might transition as to an individual plan.
So we have a definition that we used to use in Washington payroll tax, Jason. Maybe you're thinking the same thing.
Yep.
Minimum meaningful coverage that you plan to keep. So what would be enough coverage where it's worthwhile to file a claim with the insurance company, even as like a discount or a coupon off what the cost of care, you might be paying out of pocket is, right? That would be worthwhile, right, to claim on your policy. And because the policies, can be stacked, right? They don't offset benefits. You can buy a policy today, just to lock something in at a younger age, maybe, and then buy yourself a little bit more time, 5 or 10 years from now, you have more income, you have a better idea of what your retirement plans are. You can add another policy with whatever the best of class policy is at that time. And both of those policies are going to benefit you. The only time we try to discourage that is if you're buying a policy and then you're going to drop it because for the most part, it's not going to do a lot if you don't hold on to that policy, especially the policies that have that, level premium expected to be level premium structure, which is almost everything that we offer. So that's my personal definition. I'm sure everybody can come up with something different because it's really a client specific thing. But Jason, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's definitely not a one size fits all, or I can just like have it on a slip of paper and say, this is it, this is the starter plan. But what I can say is there's a number of characteristics, which I think, again, you nailed it. This is why individual long-term care producers need to be paying attention to the group market because if you can be the one to get in and get those starter plans, then I think one of the core tenets to a starter plan is it gets you started, it does not get you finished, and you can add individual coverage on top of it as income allows and as your situation allows, where you're really setting up building blocks for planning for long-term care kind of throughout your window of availability to do it rather than all at once. I think that does a number of things psychologically for people. If you're getting a starter plan, maybe at a younger age, through your employer, through a rather familiar process with getting other benefits, um, gets you in the door. I have a plan for long-term care. You can say that now. Your head rests a little bit more softly on the pillow, but also the next time the conversation comes around, number one, there's altogether a little less planning to do. And the conversation is not taken as hostile as others may take the first conversation. I think it's something to ease you into this because the nature of the individual side is we don't know where anybody is in their step in the process until they come through our door and we have a fact-finding conversation. But with group long-term care, it's kind of irrespective, right? I'm here to educate you about long-term care and show you something that's being offered by your employer. I think it's just a way to lubricate a lot of the systems of lifelong planning for long-term care with insurance or otherwise, right? So, like, I just think it's a great way to develop a farm of some of your best clients if you start working with groups at the end of the day.
And I'll give a personal anecdote on this too. And because everyone's path is different, mine was I bought an individual policy first, and I bought $100 a day, 3,000 a month with 3% inflation. Obviously not the full cost of care, fully aware of that, but something I could afford at the time. And then more recently, we got a group plan that, was 5% compound inflation on it, and I bought 7,500 a month with 5% inflation to add to that policy. And I'm keeping both because of the diversification of having a traditional policy, reimbursement, a hybrid policy, indemnity. And I think that flexibility is going to be key for me. But it was a different order, Jason, than buying the group and then getting individual, right?
Yeah, I'm
Every
the
order is going to be
absolute
different.
opposite end of the spectrum. At this moment, I don't have a large amount of assets to protect, but I know long-term care will, likely be relevant to me at some point in time, and I will have assets to protect. And given that I had the opportunity to get a really valuable long-term care plan, quick and easy process at a rate that I can afford, partially helped out by my employer, I'm gonna jump at that. I mean, obviously because I'm a long-term care professional, but there are other young people who will jump at that opportunity too. And I know down the road when I do have more assets to protect and more income and assets to buy that protection with, I will do more, but I know I'm not starting at zero. So, yeah, I think it's two opposite ends of the spectrum, but I think it can absolutely be, we can be a microcosm of all the others out there. Um, let's see. It looks like we're still not going to get to every question, but some of these are repeats, dupes. I'll be on vacation, but I'm extremely interested in the recording. Well, you got it. Let's see. Ooh, good one. How do you see the future of long-term care communities and facilities looking? And I would love if any of you else on the call have any insight into that or thoughts on that. I'd love to hear from you too. But what do you guys think? I think this is a pretty open question. Anybody can jump on this one.
There are so many unknowns. You don't know what you don't know. I mean, to try to figure out what the future of the delivery system is going to look like in healthcare and long-term care is just, I think it's nearly impossible.
I agree.
Let's say for the next 5 years, because I think we have a little bit more visibility. I'll give you a
Well,
couple of anecdotes there too.
go for it.
But, and really just from some of our partners like Amada, we can see this happening is they're growing very, very fast in the home care space. There is definitely a desire to have an option to stay at home
Hmm.
to have professionals come into the home, provide that care instead of family members. And a lot of it is there's a shortage. There's huge
Yeah.
demand, and there's a shortage of those caregivers. So the challenge we see, of course, is the cost of care rising because of that supply-demand imbalance. But I do think there's going to be more entering that space, right? If it's getting to be higher income for you as well, right? It gets more expensive. It means there's more of a opportunity to build a business there. I do think you're going to see continued entrance and growth in the home care industry. I also think, assisted living facilities and the community setting is highly attractive. We see CCRCs, continuing care
Yeah.
retirement communities, playing a role. They're not new, but there's definitely a lot of growth there. Just because, again, the same demographic trends, right? People want to age with other people that are in a similar situation as them, but they're not in need of care yet, right? They're independent living to start, and then assisted living is more of a natural transition. And of
Hmm.
course, we see the cognitive kind of tsunami, right? Because that's one of the fastest growing, causes of long-term care. And a lot of that is actually taken care of in the facility setting because it's more economical to take care of people in that environment. And that's happening in the assisted living communities. So, I mean, that's what we see today. That's what I see over the next 5 years. And the only difference in the future is going to be how do they reduce cost? How do they apply technology? How do they apply AI to help people, reduce the staffing needs? So I definitely think you're going to see some forward-thinking folks in that space that are going to be leaders in that growth because they're able to reduce their costs so much, right, that they can afford to be more competitive versus the ones that don't adopt technology. Jury's still out as to what that technology is going to look like, right? But there's a lot of startups in that space that we're even talking to.
Hmm.
Um, and I just think I have a lot of, I guess, optimism, right, that all of that investment that's happening there is going to really benefit the senior living arena overall.
Hmm.
100%. And again, this is kind of just like stabbing out into the future, but I feel like this is a relatively educated stab based on just the sentiment that's out there in the world. But I think communities and facilities are going to look more like uh, less facilities, more communities. And I think where there is a necessity for facilities, it's like you said, Mark, it's just increased investment into um, just the overall efficiency of those facilities and, you know, really having facilities for those who really need them and having alternatives outside of facilities continue to get better and better and better, like CCRCs, assisted living communities, and of course, home health care. The one study group that really sticks out to me still is Esther Greenhouse's session on just talking about the built environment for aging in place at home. And that's just one of those sessions that I haven't been able to get out of my mind. And every time I go into a new house, especially a house of someone who's older, you start thinking about, is this actually a good and safe environment for somebody to age in place? I think there's going to continue to be more focus on things like that. How can we continue nursing home avoidance if possible and keep the strain off of Medicaid, which mostly, almost entirely plays in nursing homes, right? So there's lots of reasons based in sentiment. There's lots of, governmental legislative reasons to think that way. So without giving anything too specific, that's what I think. That was a really good question.
Hmm.
I like that. Um, let's see. Um, I like this one. Cash or reimbursement? That's it. That's the question. ¿Por qué no los dos?
Cash is king, folks. Yeah. At the end of the day, I can speak to both sides of that. I think it's not the most important thing in the long-term care policy, but I do think based on the prior experiences with reimbursement, a lot of people just want the easy button and you don't have to pay extra necessarily for it. It's on a lot of policies today or as an alternative. So I do think you're going to see carriers continuing to add those indemnity or cash indemnity options. Just takes away a big objection, right? Which is I got to deal with receipts and claims processes, and I just want to avoid that friction. If I'm paying, paying top dollar for this policy, give me a premium experience.
So do you think you'll see more carriers doing cash?
Well, it's interesting. I think indemnity
Hmm.
is a little bit of a safer model, and carriers, we talked about
Yeah.
supply being dependent on how carriers feel about safety. It does tend to avoid some fraud having indemnity versus cash indemnity.
Hmm.
And the distinction there is with indemnity, you have to get qualified services,
Hmm.
right? With cash indemnity, as soon as you're ADL eligible, you get, a monthly payout. And that can be problematic with fraud. It can be problematic with family members and elder
Elder
abuse.
abuse, yeah.
It can be problematic with hiring workers and being an employer for a home care aide in your home. You have to think about those things.
Hmm.
So we like the flexibility of the cash indemnity, especially if you're not paying extra, but there is a slippery slope there for the carrier that the costs will be higher and it's not as rosy as it may appear as the consumer. So I don't mind the middle ground indemnity model either.
Yeah, and that, with the indemnity model, you can think of it as I try to explain it as a middle ground between reimbursement and indemnity. The reimbursement side is you need to prove loss, you need to prove the use of professional care, and that definition can vary carrier to carrier, but it generally is going to depend around an hours per week, month, whatever it may be. It's a very interesting middle ground that we only got exposed to quite a lot because that's the definition, the payout definition for a lot of the predominant group plans right now. So that'll be an interesting development for me too. I mean, cash indemnity is not something that has been front and center at all times in long-term care history either. So there's still some, data and proving to go through. So who knows how that continues to shape up, but yeah, agreed. Just being able to get cash, no questions asked when your claim is certified is great. Just depends on that support structure that you have around you and how vulnerable your situation is, right?
My message to the carriers is make your process easier, make it a better experience, and people won't care as much about which model, which is good for your bottom line. But you really have to invest to streamline that. You got to think about what it's like to file a claim so that, your clients think of you as a provider of choice and not, you know, okay, I have to do this because, that's my responsibility as an insurance company, but I'm not going to take that responsibility seriously. We see a lot of companies kind of, especially those that are out of the market, not investing because they want to ignore the problem they have.
Well, can't you see the claims process, or at least part of the claims process, um, uh, utilizing AI in the future to simplify the
Hmm.
process,
Yeah, I mean, there's so many
save
opportunities
money?
to
Yeah.
reduce costs. In fact, at the ILTCI conference that will be in Orlando in March, a lot of the vendors there, a lot of the thought talks there are about those enforced blocks and how to save
Hmm.
cost. But there are some challenges with it too. AI in insurance is relatively new. It's regulated. People worried about discrimination, you
Hmm.
know, all kinds of different things. You have to have good data for AI to work. Sometimes their data is a mess. So I think it's going to happen. Yeah, it's kind of inevitable, but the investments are going there. But I hope it's more from a consumer-centric perspective, right? Not just a cost savings perspective.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. This is a deep conversation as a whole around long-term care, and that's because everybody submitted really, really good questions.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll add one thing though too that's going to help on the claim side is going to
yeah,
be these concierges, right? We talk about Amada Senior Care,
Mhm.
and every client we
yes.
recommend going to Amada to help file the claim, to evaluate eligibility, to have that concierge because it is an independent party that's doing that and you can do it with any carrier. But I do see others cropping up in that space. We have some of our specialists that have taken either a second career, right, to actually do that as a service themselves as contract long-term care contract experts. So I do think there's going to be continued growth there because you want to have that advocate right for you, especially if you've really invested in this policy.
Yeah, we're going to
Yeah.
be adding Amada information to the group post-sale process, making sure that all our enrollees have information that will help them file a claim if they need to. So we could, we can do that on the individual side too.
hmm
Absolutely.
100%. Hug your local Amada franchisee. I think you need them. You need
Yeah,
them, and
yeah.
if you don't have them before you need them, you're gonna go get them anyway. I guarantee you. Um, okay. Another one of my AI functions that I really like is um, I plan to read all of this if I need to, but if you can summarize and cite something for me that I can go into the source document and look at and not have to read further, um, that's like one of my favorite AI functions. I think on the claim side and on the underwriting side, we're going to see a lot of that with reading 105 pages of medical records and attending physician statements. That's a big deal, especially when we're talking about black and white qualifiers, disqualifiers. So we can think of it as disqualifiers on the underwriting side. On the claim side, we can think of qualifiers for qualifying for claim. Those things will speed up the process quite a bit and will keep somebody from having to, get all the way to page 75 in their reading to find out that on page 75 we have a disqualifier and I wasted my time reading 75 pages, right? So for those individuals who work on the claim side, it's going to speed up their process quite a lot. But the AI needs to have kind of those guardrails in place. Here's exactly where I found it in the document. You need to go in and read it for yourself and confirm, of course. Um, but I think that'll be a huge help. And I want to add one more question before we wrap it. Finding the money, how to take stock, mutual fund, cash value dividends to pay for LTC. I think the practice of finding the money is super, super important. Um, I think I'll offer one way that's in your control and one way that is in others' control. And you need to meet those others. So, what's in your control is how you're doing your fact finding. So, what you ask on your intake form in that initial fact finding session, um, if you're having trouble finding the money and your clients and prospects do have money, you are likely not doing thorough enough fact finding. I suggest watching back the study group with Linda Tallheimer when we went through her intake form. There is not anything left out of that form. And, if that form is not filled out, Linda is going through and asking those questions. And I think for many of us, there can be this sort of blocker that we have in our minds. I don't want to be necessarily um, coming across as too invasive or needing to know everything about your life to sell you a long-term care insurance policy. But you need to be able to frame that for the client to give them comfort. Number one, regulators and my industry in general are requiring that I ask many of these questions to ensure that I'm doing due diligence and that this plan is suitable for you. So I do, to a large degree, need to know about income and assets to be able to determine suitability. But number two, this is going to help me find the most efficient option for your financial plan, right? If we have you do XYZ plan out of pocket when we had an asset over here that we could have repurposed as a more efficient financial solution for you, I didn't do my job well enough. So I need to find this out to do my job effectively. But then I also think, because many of us are railroaded by these professionals, I would get the financial planner involved, especially if they are mentioned from the start. The financial planner will help you find that money. They know about every single source that the client has. So I would say it's probably better to get introduced to financial planners who introduce you to their clients, and that makes the financial fact finding all the more easy. But that's just two ways to continue to find the money.
Yeah, and I think there's an organic way that that conversation flows. Like when I talk about it or educate about it, I talk about here's what professional caregiving looks like versus family caregiving. A
Yep,
lot of people want professional caregiving. How do you pay for that professional caregiving, right? Self-funding, insurance, usually both. We talk about how much of both. How are you paying for self-funding? What asset, what income are you using to pay for that professional care?
yep.
That's really what you're doing is it's a psychology to it as well as if you're just allocating that dollar that you were going to pay for out of pocket towards insurance, right? Then it's very organic, right? To talk about.
To leverage that dollar.
Yeah, it's not like
Yeah.
you're digging in their pockets. You're just asking those questions about how they get to their goal. You're being
Doing something
compensated.
more efficient with what they had earmarked for this anyway, right? Like what
Correct.
would be the first asset you would use? And that's exactly how we educate on the group side as well, to get people to understand why long-term care insurance in general. It is one vehicle that helps us fund professional care. I think that's like, you know, so obvious to many of us that we don't even think about it. And educating on the group side has really caused us to get to these like square one items. What are people not thinking about and maybe so painfully obvious to you that you don't bother to mention it? Paying for professional care is definitely one of them, right? Um, I think that's good. There were a lot of really good questions in here. Um, really provocative questions that I think forced some pretty good answers out of us. So I hope you guys enjoyed that exercise of walking through that.
I had one
Just
question messaged to me. I don't want to belabor it, so I'll answer it real quick while we're
mhm.
on. Raymond had asked, what is the template of a foreign country has offices? I think he means company, has offices and American employees in the United States. May LTC insurance companies offer benefits to employees who are Americans? And we did talk a lot about international benefits. So a lot of the question about where people are going to retire might lead you to decide to offer particular products. But in general, if you do have people that are going to retire in the US to get care in the US, you can usually offer benefits to those employees. There may be like a social security number requirement, just like when you offer individual policies. Um, they have to be, either, a citizen to be able to get it, but they don't usually have international benefits. So just be careful, to do your due diligence of recommendations if they are not planning to get care in the US.
Death benefits generally paid anywhere in the world. Long-term care benefits for group plans,
Yeah.
generally just the US.
Yeah. And Raymond, you said, it's for, not for international benefits. Totally understand. You can offer it usually to employees, even those that are not based in the US today. They just have to have like a residence or a social security number. There may be a requirement like that if they're expats.
Cool. Um, I think that'll do it. Thank you again for all the questions and just for being here to listen to some of the answers. I just want to let you guys know a little news that Secure Care 4 is on the horizon, and there's a lot of really exciting additions that they're making or updates that they're making to this product that I think you guys are going to want to know all about. And the good news is the day after the product releases, we're going to have Tim go on the study group to talk us all through it. So that is what I'm looking forward to most out of our study groups to come. So we'll get you the timely information that you need and make sure you're all set to have it locked and loaded in your conversations. So that's where I wanted to leave it. Thanks for joining us. Be well, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a good one.
Bye.